That's okay.
Tis the season. In more ways than one.
Recording in progress.
So, okay? Okay. Calling to order the March 17, 2026 meeting of the Southborough Select Board. The first item on the agenda is public comment, and this is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on a matter that's not on the posted agenda. We try to keep public comment to 3 minutes, and it's not intended as a back and forth with the board, just an opportunity for people to offer a comment. Is there anyone here or in the online audience that, yeah? Yep.
I will be quick because I know you've got a heavy slate tonight. Because Kevin Miller, 18 Lattisquama, I'm speaking tonight as chair of the Historical Commission. And I wanted to come down, today's, of course, St. Patrick's Day, but it's also Evacuation Day. This is the semi-quincentennial, right, of the day. It was early in the morning that some 11,000 British troops and some loyalist supporters boarded about 120 or so ships, various vessels, and made their way to the then friendlier shores of Halifax, Nova Scotia, ending, of course, the siege of Boston, which took about a year. General Washington, the whole thing surrounding, and we're waiting for the British to get out. And it was done at the end of General Henry Knox's 60 tons of artillery. Then he was Colonel Henry Knox, 25-year-old whippersnapper, and that dragged all this cannon and howitzers down from Fort Ticonderoga, down through New York and across the length of Massachusetts, ultimately to Dorchester Heights, where the British, seeing the light of day, finally decamped on this day 250 years ago. So it was about a month ago. I know you folks talked about it in a meeting, I think in early February. On February 8th, which was Super Bowl Sunday, actually, there was an event in Framingham that they've had a series, Revolution 250 and Knox 250. It's a wonderful organization. It's had a series of events throughout Massachusetts honoring the various towns through which the noble train of artillery headed by then Colonel Knox passed. And so on February 8th, it was the turn of Marlborough, Southborough, Wayland, and Framingham. And so there was a big event in Framingham on that day, and it was amazingly well attended. And just a ton of people there, and it was appropriately frigid, if you remember Super Bowl Sunday. And I had the pleasure of accepting, on behalf of the town, what I want to now turn over to you, which is this plaque saying, in commemoration of America's semi-quincentennial, Southborough is honored for aiding Henry Knox's 1776 noble train of artillery, one of many acts of service and sacrifice in the cause of independence. So it's a really nice plaque, and I'm hoping, Mr. Purple, that this can get hung up in the townhouse somewhere. I was going to bring a hammer tonight, but I thought you might be slightly alarmed if I showed up so armed. But here it is. Happy to turn that over. And there is also a proclamation, if I just didn't mess it up. Oh dear, I did. Signed by the Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll in recognition of Southborough's role in the noble train of artillery. And so what I would like to do at Historical Commission expense is to get this framed. Sure. And perhaps we can hang them both together somewhere in the townhouse. Sure. But for now, I'll turn this over to you as well. And that's all I've got. Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure. And I must say, the thing was unbelievably well. I was a little alarmed when I got there and saw how many people were present because I had to talk. But it all went well. And incidentally, just this past Sunday, 2 days ago, we had our own Knox event at the new Fayetteville Hall. A lecture by Ben Haley of the Mass Historical Commission on Henry Knox, and referencing, for instance, our Knox monument, which sits right in front of the community house, right down here. And that was quite well attended. We had 50-plus people. I know Marguerite, your husband, was there. I didn't get to speak with him, unfortunately, but he saw it. I hope he liked it. It went quite well, and so thanks for your time, and good luck tonight.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Select Board issue a huzzah
to Henry Knox in appreciation of his role.
All right, I second. All those in favor?
No, you have to actually,
Huzzah.
huzzah. 1, 2,
I don't
3.
even know what it was, so that's okay.
Huzzahs.
What are we supposed to do
Red-
now?
Everybody together. 1, 2, 3. Huzzah. There.
Okay, there's one other person that's got a comment?
One person online.
Yeah? Hello?
It says connecting to audio.
All right, well, there's having difficulty here, so maybe let's just move to the next item, which is approval of the common vicular license for Fitness Fusion LLC. Do you want to come forward? All right, so if you could just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about Fitness Fusion.
I'm Becky Pollinger,
I'm Nicholas Pollinger.
and Fitness Fusion is a blend of our two businesses. So we also own BP Training, Health and Wellness,
Yep.
and Fuel Fusion, which is a nutrition shop inside the workout space. So the plan is to have healthy shakes, healthy teas for our clients that are working out there.
All right, does anyone have any questions about this?
Sounds good.
Where exactly are you?
Right on 155 Boston Road. So you know where the car wash and the gas station
So
are?
Boston Post Road, okay.
Yeah,
I got it.
Not Post Road, Boston Road.
Okay,
There's
all
no
right,
Boston.
but I know where you are.
Any other questions?
No.
All right, I move that we approve the common vicular license for Fitness Fusion LLC, DBA Fuel Fusion Nutrition.
Second.
All those in favor?
Great.
All those-
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. That was pretty quick.
Quick, right.
All right. So the next item on our agenda is a joint meeting with the Southborough School Committee for two reasons. One, to review and approve the charge for the elementary school building committee. And the second is an update on the Trotter School roof replacement. Chelsea, do you want to call your meeting to order? And if you want to sit up here too, that's fine as well.
So I'll call the Southborough School Committee meeting to order at 6:45. We have 3 members in person and 2 online.
All right.
Happy St. Patrick's Day,
Happy St. Patrick's Day to
And-
you.
evacuation day.
Okay, so since we made good progress at the special town meeting on the 2nd, and town meeting approved Article 1 for the study of different options for the Neary renovation, we put together a draft charge, and this reflects a draft I know that Greg had prepared, and then I had made some edits to that I input into the select board packet, so you see in the upper right-hand corner, draft for discussion. So I'm hoping that we can approve this charge tonight and then get going pretty quickly on starting to appoint members of the committee so that we can get to work. So I want to first begin with, find out if, what comments people on the select board think of the draft charge. Does anyone want to begin first?
I can go.
Yep.
So I really only have a couple minor comments, I think, but, so underneath, where is it? Purpose. Do we really need the option called out for option 1 in similar proposals? But could we eliminate that altogether? Because it's already called out as option 1 and option 2 in the overview.
Well, I put that just because I think option 2 is really not designed to be like a long-term sustainable proposal. What I was trying to do with that language here is to honor the inclusion of option 2 in Article 1 that passed.
I'm the troublemaker there that pushed that particular item.
Okay, well, I read it maybe opposite than what you meant, Al, so my first thought, which maybe we can just discuss, was it seemed like it was called out to be focused on versus separated in that way. That's, at least that's the way I initially read it. I was thinking maybe a 15-year and a 50-year option instead of that language, but that was really like my thought there. And then the only other comment I had was there's a typo in the membership section.
There
Where-
is, yep, that was
Yeah.
a bad typo on my part.
Yeah, so just aligning 2 and 2. But that was really my thought.
Kathy?
So my comment, I'm fine with it. I think it's well-drafted and good charge. It's my understanding that the school committee this week voted unanimously to ask us to consider, instead of a 3 select board, 2 school committee, or some version of that, to have 5 members jointly appointed, I believe is what the
Yes.
vote was. So I just want to make sure I'm right about the vote.
That's right. School committee met on this last Wednesday, and that was
And 5-0?
conclusion.
5-0?
Yes.
Okay. So.
4-0, sorry, we didn't have a member there.
All right, but it's unanimous. Okay, so I think we should at least talk about
Yes.
that as another choice. I can go either way. I think we'll still end up with 5 people, whether it's 3-2 or whether it's 5, but I'm open to considering that, given the school committee voted to propose doing it that way.
No, I think that's probably the most significant issue to discuss and hammer out to get this over the finish line. Al?
I'm going to get myself in trouble, but that's just the way it is. I'm more concerned, I'm generally okay with this. I think I'm more concerned particularly with how the actual committee is perceived. And I'm going to say some things you won't like. The school committee is on record saying that they don't like option 2. There was an attempt to remove option 2 on the floor of town meeting. That attempt failed by a solid margin. And if the committee is formed of people who have significantly advocated against option 2, that's not going to help the credibility of the process, whether it's option 1 or option 2. And so I guess it's a cautionary note, because, whatever we do is going to require 2/3 and a vote at the ballot. And so what's important, I think, is that the people that are appointed not be seen as supporters of an agenda. And that means people like me shouldn't be appointed, because I have an agenda, and I've been pretty upfront about it. I'm not volunteering anyway, so don't worry. But I think there are a number of other people who have also sort of publicly opposed one option or the other, and I think we need to appoint people who are clearly committed to a full vetting of both options.
So can I just respond to that?
Yep.
I'm sorry, were you?
I'm done,
Okay.
yeah.
I understand what you're saying, and the school committee voted and put out the RFS last week, and we took the exact language from the Warren article and put it in the bid doc.
Yep.
So I can see you thinking that if we went off course by what town meeting said. We followed, we did add language so it was clear that the roof is estimated at 4.5 million, because that wasn't clear in the article, right? But I'm not sure that it's fair to say that school committee has an agenda where we're not going to bring forward multiple options to town meeting. We brought forward multiple options to this town meeting. We were clear on what we wanted to support and what we didn't want to support, which is fine. didn't oppose that any of the other articles were there. And if we tried to pull a fast one with the bid documents, I can see you continuing to have that thought process, but we did not. And I sent it to Andrew and Mark so that you guys could review it. And we took the language directly from the article. So
I'm not accusing anybody of anything.
Well,
What
you
I'm
kind of
saying is
just did, but.
that the people that get appointed need to be perceived as not having taken a hard position on either for or against any particular option. Because otherwise, it's important that we get this done, one way or the other.
So,
School committee wants to get it done.
I've said what I'm going to say, and I don't want to sound
so
insulting.
Al, I agree, just another way of kind of saying what you said, and I think the goal is, having gone through this process once, we don't want to have to go through it a third time. We want to have a project that gets a consensus, gets a 2/3 vote at town meeting.
We do too.
And so, and traditionally, I think it's in part because all the prior building committees have been MSBA building committees, which they have to be select board appointed, but traditionally this has been, a select board appointed committee. So the reason why I thought that it would be appropriate to do, there's all sorts of good reasons to have completely joint appointments, but I just think that, I think we probably would approach it from the appointments from the select board in part because of, Mr. Hamilton's input and whatnot. We may be appointing people that are more, a little bit, have a fiscally conservative approach to this, and then this is just kind of a stereotype here, right? And then that the school committee would appoint people who would emphasize more the educational aspects of the project, and then if we made those appointments, you would have a group that hopefully would have kind of the best of both, and that you would have a group that would be able to put together through compromise, a group of people to gather support to get it over the finish line at the last town meeting. So I'm only one of 5, so I don't know how this is going to turn out, but that was my thinking on the 3-2. So I'll just leave it at that. I'll let others respond. Yes, Marguerite?
I think about this charge that the unspoken part of the charge is, please come back with something that we can get town meeting to support with 67% of the vote, right? So if it's going to be extravagantly priced, that will go through the same thing again. I am confident that the school committee will be reasonable in what they look at, because it's not going to be them looking, it's going to be people that they have approved to the same degree that we have. So I'm okay with 5 and 5. I can go 3 and 2, but I don't think it's necessary. I think it's, I think 3 and 2 is more, what's the word I want? Assuming that people are going to behave a certain way when we don't know that.
Kathy?
So, Al, I agree with everything you said. The intent is to appoint 5 qualified, and we've got the qualifications listed here, rejected people that will look at both options fairly and clearly. And they're going to, I think the intention is to bring them both back. So I am not worried about the 10 of us coming up with 5 good people. So I could go either way. But out of deference and respect to the school committee, given it's a school, I think my vote would be to have 5 joint appointments is my preference, but I'm fine with the 3-2 also. So whatever you decide is fine with me as long as it's one of those 2.
All right, so Al and Tim, what do you think?
I'm in favor of 3-2.
I'm in a 3-2 camp.
All right. So do you have any other yes?
I don't know if
John.
it's time for other school committee comments or not, so I'll wait till it is.
I think, I'm glad you interrupted me because I was, okay. Yes.
So I actually really don't understand One of the things that happened in the school committee meeting, I think some people maybe saw the meeting or are aware of it, is we actually put forth in our discussion 3-2, which was 3 people from the school committee, 2 people from the select board. We rejected that because, and again, that was 3 from the school committee, 2 from the select board. We rejected that because that seems to be pitting one board against the other. And why we all wouldn't want to have a process where we're working together makes no sense to me. And you want to talk about optics, well, here's the select board's people, here's the school committee's people, and why wouldn't, certainly the school committee would like to have input from the select board on all possible candidates, because we think that has value. And I would think the select board would feel the same way. You want to end up with the best people, you know, and forget the optics to some degree. You just want to end up with the best people and to have input from both boards on all of the possible candidates. It seems to me that it makes eminent sense. So I have no idea why the select board would want a structure that really looks like, well, here's our 3 folks, and oh yeah, the school committee can have a couple of folks, and we'll go forward with that. It makes no sense to me at all.
Anyone else have any comments? All right. So other than the composition of the committee, anyone else, the select board, have any other comments on the draft and the charge?
Chelsea, could you speak to the schedule that you have moving forward over the spring and summer, the dates?
Yes. So the bid documents are due by April 6th, is that right? Yes. And I believe we need to do the selection by April 9th. Is that right? This is from memory, sorry. I'm just looking at my calendar. And then work will take place, and I think we probably need to figure out what our goal end date is to have a special town meeting in the fall. But that's kind of the outline of what we have. The latest, I think the last date in the bid doc was April 17th for when the contract would be signed.
Thank you.
What day of the week is the 6th?
The 6th is a Monday,
Okay, so
and
we've
then
got the whole
Thursday.
week, 6, 7, 8.
Thursday is the 9th.
And then, so from our select board calendar, right now, our next regularly scheduled meeting is the 7th. Now, we finalize this charge tonight, we can start advertising for people to volunteer this first thing tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And then, I know we've had a lot of meetings back to back to back, but I would be willing to have a meeting of the select board on Tuesday, March 31st, to begin interviewing and maybe even starting to vote on appointments, and then try to get it done between the 31st and the 7th. We have a regularly scheduled meeting on the 7th. Would that work for people? We could, and we would have the flexibility. We could do Zoom or in person. My preference is always in person.
Are you thinking 5 and 5, or are you thinking the select board would pick 3?
Well, I'm gonna, and I have a lot of respect for what Mr. Challen said, but I'm gonna stick with my original position. So then it looks like there's gonna be 3 votes for the 3-2. So in terms of the process, does that work for people to have a meeting on the 31st? Okay, I see nodding heads. All right.
So we have the 2nd, just so you know, we discussed April 2nd to be penciled in for interviews. So
Okay.
procedurally, if you were to go with the 3 and the 2, how
Yeah.
would we handle that? Because are we having people apply for your select board seat or your school committee seat? Is it a pool? You guys interview first and pick, we
Yeah.
interview second, like, how procedurally do you expect this to work if it's not joint appointments?
I would expect that they would apply to each individual board, so there could be a set of people applying for the school committee positions who might have a different, and a set of people who would be, that administratively, that's vastly simpler. There's nothing to prevent somebody from applying for both.
I think it makes
I don't see why
sense.
it matters. Why wouldn't you
Yeah,
just
I
get a
think it
group
makes
of
sense to just
people
ask for
and we interview
volunteers and
pick
then,
3, then.
Yeah.
I just don't
everybody
want them
else
to interview twice, that's my,
Here in the charge, it's asking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of people: architecture, engineering, and building design, municipal finance, budgeting, capital planning, large-scale construction, project management, facilities planning, communications, public engagement, marketing, and then education, school operations, and instructional program. Are we going to like divide it up, the school takes?
no, but it's not intended, that's just, those qualities are preferred.
Uh-huh.
But if there's a good person who, the idea is not that you check off a box, one person has this, and the next person has that, and the next person has that.
I'm just thinking that something, for instance, communications, public engagement, that could fall through the cracks and not be,
We
dealt
probably
with.
won't get one of each. We're just trying to make sure
Yeah.
that who we do get at least has that background. Chelsea, what do you think about having a joint meeting on that Tuesday with us? And you guys go first, we go
I
first?
feel like
and-
somebody couldn't do the 31st. Denise can't do the 31st. But we could do interviews on the 31st together, and we just wait for us to do our appointments on the 2nd.
Okay.
We could do, were you not available? No, you could do the 31st.
And that way they don't come twice for interviews, is
Right.
what I think you were trying
Mhm.
to avoid.
Yeah, I just don't want to do multiple interviews. But I think we should be from the same pool of candidates because
Yeah, I
think
agree.
that we want the best 5 people, right? And we want the best balanced committee we can get.
And I think it helped to hear what they say to everybody, right?
Yes.
So do it.
Mary?
Hi, Mary Tinty, 2 General Henry Knox Road. Just speaking as a member of the public who has followed this for a very, very long time, it would be so lovely if the next part of this whole process was far less fraught than the last part was. And I think that's everyone's goal. And just to reiterate some things that were said, I think the way you get to that is by building consensus, by finding the best candidates and sort of having more people involved than less. This conversation, as it is sort of taking place right now, makes me nervous. I'm already, as you're talking about what the qualities are for the positions and how this is going to get divvied up, I'm seeing so many divisions come down the pike that were present the last time too. And I think I just wanted to share, as I'm listening, that I would feel much more comfortable as a voter, as someone who's followed this, with both the select board and the school committee doing this jointly. The 3-2 is making me nervous, and as you talk about how those positions get split, how you interview people, I just think we're all leaving ourselves very vulnerable to people not trusting the process. And I think the way that you get trust is by having consensus on the back end. So I think that happens with both of you, and in a way where neither committee can be pointed to as a scapegoat in any way. So I think cohesion is best, and I just wanted to communicate that. Thanks.
All right, I understand what you're saying. Okay, so I move that we approve the draft charge in the packet that has the appointments done, 3 members appointed by the select board and 2 appointed by the school committee.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, so,
Just to be clear, I would have read it the other way, but I still want, this is okay too. This-
Yeah.
I-
so I knew this was the one little,
again.
issue we
trying
would need to get
trying
through,
to
and
be a consensus builder, as Mary's referred to, so that's why I'm saying yes. But I do think we should all be in one room together to do this. So we've got the same pool, we see what questions are being answered, so you don't have to
So-
ask them again.
so we'll do this. Do you agree that it makes sense to do it in person?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
March 31st, so 6:30, should we say?
Denise,
Where?
you can't Zoom, you're.
We can do it here, right?
I think that's good. So March 31st.
We'll wait for you to vote, so you can watch the tape and, yeah. I don't know if, Laura and Alan, can you do the 31st? in person?
Let me just check my calendar. Just give me a couple minutes.
Yeah, possibly. My husband usually has a conflict on Tuesday nights, but just given some notice, I can discuss with him to figure that out.
Okay,
It's fine for me.
okay, thanks. We're all gonna do questioning, I assume.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Okay. So I think the next item is you wanted to provide an update on the roof replacement. And this is important because it's in the annual town meeting warrant as Article 15, the Trotter School roof replacement. And this is a MSBA accelerated repair
Yes.
project. So just one point of information, Mark told me this before the meeting. At our last meeting, we didn't vote on it because we wanted to put in language about the Prop 2.5 debt exclusion into it. Then I'll let you say if I get anything wrong, but this is a MSBA article where you just have to have the exact MSBA language in it.
That's correct, and but they've also prepared the motion that you have to use too, which the last 3 lines of it are all about the debt exclusion. So the language that you were looking to put in the article can't be in the article because MSBA tells you what it has to say. But the motion does specifically cite debt exclusion, which I think was the concern of the board.
Okay. Turn it over to you.
great. So we have Keith Lavoy online, who should be able to, who can walk us through a presentation with pictures similar to what was done for the Neary roof. So Vanessa, if you don't mind bringing Keith over. And this is the 4th time that we applied for MSBA. We got in on the 4th time, so, and this has been in process since 2024, I think. The time we got in was in 2024.
Yeah, that is correct, Chelsea. Vanessa, would you be able to give me sharing privilege? Is that possible, please? Okay, very good. All right, so I'm Keith Lavoy. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Operations for the district, and the presentation that I have this evening is to provide the Select Board with an update about the Trotter Middle School roof replacement project, which, as mentioned by Andrew before, is a Massachusetts School Building Authority accelerated repair program, which is different than what we went through with the Neary Core Building project. The accelerated repair program is to aid communities in moving forward capital projects by applying for a competitive grant. So a little bit of a history about where the Trotter roof lies. I'm the prior principal of Trotter Middle School, and I can say that the roof has had issues since I was there as a teacher, and certainly accelerated as I was principal for the many years leading up to what is defined in this slide with our approach towards the MSBA for the accelerated repair grant. We did make 4 attempts at pursuing this grant. It was denied in 2019, 2020, and 2022, and as Chelsea just alluded to, is accepted in 2024. There wasn't anything really wrong with the applications at those times. The MSBA has a cutoff for the number of years that a roof is aged, and that really determines how many roofs they would consider for a project. So because the roof for Trotter was built in 1998, it never met that minimum number of years until 2024, which I believe at the time made it just over 25 years old. The other key point is as we progressed through the process, we did have the roof evaluated on a number of occasions. The 2 most recent was a roof assessment report in 22, and then in 24, landing us in a full replacement of the entire roof as part of that recommendation. So a little bit about the MSBA process, which is something that many of the committee are familiar with, but I'll lay it out for as it relates to the Trotter project. It is a competitive. We submitted a statement of interest. The town of Southborough supported that statement of interest. The MSBA then came out and conducted a site visit of the roof and made sure that they were making determining factors related to its acceptance into the program, not only for its age, but the condition of the roof itself. So when MSBA came out, they gave us a thumbs up that this was a roof that would qualify. The town of Southborough's reimbursement rate is 41.32% of total eligible cost. And that finally I'll share the estimates that we have currently with the project that has been approved by the MSBA. A little bit further in the process, about 8 months ago, we were assigned a owner project manager and an architect for the project, and that was in June of '25. And they quickly dove into the project by getting detailed conditions reviews and options for repair and placements to be considered. And ultimately, the project was reviewed by the MSBA and ultimately approved at their February 25th, 2026 board meeting. So this is the estimate as it has been laid out by the OPM and the architect. The roofing cost construction estimate is just over $7.3 million. This includes a PVC roof for the flat sections and shingled for the pitch sections. The fees for the OPM to continue the work and the architect to continue the work is a little over $900,000. There is a built-in contingency of around 5%. The feasibility, which is already the part that we have conducted, and the reason why that is a minus, because that is something we've already approved and expended. So that brings the total gross cost to just over $8.8 million. The feasibility that we have already spent is eligible for reimbursement if this project goes forward as we hope. The MSBA grant is estimated at this time to be just over $3.4 million, which then leaves the remaining amount of $5.3 million, which would be ultimately the town's responsibility, and as Mark just mentioned, part of a debt exclusion. And again, the MSBA rate of reimbursement is just over 41%. So before I go into any of the current conditions, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the history and how we got to the project that's being proposed.
Yeah, Al?
I'm going to betray my age, but I think this roof has been a problem almost since the day the school was built. Is that roughly right?
That is correct.
Why?
How confident are we that we're going to be able to solve this so we can get 30 years out of this roof instead of 25 or so?
So what I've learned from the investigation, and certainly over the years of being at Trotter, is that the roof at Trotter and the decking that was applied to that roof at its earliest point of construction was not appropriate. So as they were doing the test cuts and really going through the roofing system, they identified that that would be something that would be easily repaired to not only bring it up to code, but also to bring it up to the standards of construction for this time. So they are adjusting how the decking is going to be fastened to the girders and other structures throughout the building to prevent what we had happen before, Al. So the hope is that this new roof would totally eliminate the issues that presented itself from the very beginning at Trotter.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think one of the main takeaways from the presentation is that this roof replacement, which is the MSBA accelerated repair, so we get a match, is just as important as the NERI roof. In a lot of ways, it's almost similar age. Nothing good is going to happen from kicking this can down this road, right? I think it'd be beneficial if the slides that Keith just gave, you'd also be prepared to have those at town meeting too on the 11th.
Yes. well, if we don't do this, we are going down the same path that we went, just hopefully are coming out of.
All right, anyone have any questions?
And Keith has more, Keith has pictures too, if you
Oh,
want to
sorry.
see those.
Okay.
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
Pictures do tell a story.
It does, and I think that was important. I want to make sure to stop there so that people understood the history, and obviously, this is a little slightly different process when it comes to accelerated repair versus the core project. I want to make sure that was clear, and then certainly the slide hopefully lays things out pretty clearly about the burden, and now we can show what the current conditions are and what our students and staff are experiencing at the Trotter School, and I lived it as well, so I can validate what I'm going to show in the next few slides. First is that there has been moisture detection throughout the building. This is not just from the shingled or the flat sections, it's really both sections have experienced roof leaks over the years, some worse than others, some go away for a while and some come back. We certainly have had to dealt with mold exposure in a few areas. This is localized mold that is easily removed, like the ceiling tiles that you see on this image here. And we have had to do a variety of very creative ways to help control this as best we can. Some of the reasons why this is happening, and this was the presentation that our architect helped us, and these are images that they have. Inadequate draining systems, which is up on the left. You can see that it pools in places it shouldn't. Definitely the edge of the roof and how things are draining properly into the gutters is something that will be corrected with the new roof system. Bottom left has water going towards some of our HVAC equipment on top of the auditorium. And then the bottom right is probably the best example of a drain that's not working, as there's a pool of water and a simple roof drain right there that is not functioning properly because of the pitch. Next level of concerns that we're having, this was where we're seeing, like Chelsea mentioned, some of those degradation of the building that are concerning from fascia substrates that are coming away from the building itself, gutter systems that need to be replaced, and certainly drainage and other matters that are creating the saturation of masonry, which is never a good thing to have on a building of this size and this nature. These images really do a nice job of showing how the pitch sections of the roof have failed. You can see, if you can look closely, you can see the undulations of the roof. This is where the decking and the insulation have been compromised in places and have created conditions that just are exposure in a lot of ways, and certainly active leaks are present in these areas. Probably my favorite picture, there's Rob. But we have had to create some diverter systems to prevent leaks from creating more damage. These are basically tarp systems that allow us to drain active roof leaks. This roof leak has been one that's been around for a very long time, and I know the room well. We have tried to repair this section multiple times and no event, and basically it's resulted in a full replacement being the only solution. And this is in the older part of the building. This is not part of the new reno that was in '03, but this was original 1998 construction. And some of the things that have to be done, certainly ceiling tiles are removed, leaks are tried to be controlled, but these are things that are presently in place throughout the building. And obviously, as Chelsea alluded to, what happens, what risk, this slide I think is going to also be important to share at town meeting. You know, it's going to be the continuation of the repair and trying to keep up with it as best we can. And one thing that is understated with roof leaks like this, and certainly was on display with the Neary roof replacement project, is the impact that this has not only to operations, but our faculty, students, and staff. Is certainly something we want to reduce, as well as any mold exposure that can continue, as we had at the Finn School a few years back. And then we talk about the MSBA project, was certainly something that this board is very familiar with. You know, this is a 41.32% for all eligible costs to be reimbursed, and that project has been improved. For kicking this down the road a few years, one, we give up that spot in the MSBA queue, and there's no guarantee of getting back into it. The town would ultimately be responsible for the full price of the project, and then there would be an escalation as things go, and we're definitely aware of all those types of things. So I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions about the conditions of the Trotter roof.
I have a question. So is this one that would be done over the summer? Like,
So it's through the MSBA process. So
Uh-huh.
we'd work with our architects and OPM and really map out the next steps. Most likely, this is not a summer project.
okay.
Why not? Because we got 2 votes, right? You got to get a positive vote at town meeting, 2/3 vote, then you've got to get a majority vote at the ballot on May 12th. Why would the MSBA at that point, I mean, they voted for this, right? So now they're waiting for our votes, right? So once that happens, if it's positive, why wouldn't they be ready to roll at that point?
MSBA would be ready, but architectural drawings and engineering still need to take place.
But so we think we'll have time to get Neary going. You just don't think that they'll have enough time to get Chartier going, so to do 2 roofs at one time?
Correct.
This is much more complicated than the near.
Bigger.
Yeah, you want to put the effort into making sure that we don't do what we did last time.
Yeah, and I think, Al, to your point, the prior roof was done with the School Building Authority. That had been revamped to the MSBA for the exact reasons
Yeah.
of these types of roofs were built and didn't last. So through the MSBA new process, there's more rigor and accountability to the people installing these systems.
The reality is that there's no scenario under which this building isn't part of a Southborough asset for another 50 years. And we don't really have a choice. And
Can you do the roof with the kids in school?
You're going to have to.
Yes.
This whole experience the last 2 years, Greg, has made me think like a huge percentage of your job
That's why I
is
became
basically
a
like being
superintendent.
is like being a general
had
contractor.
a full head of hair before,
supervisor,
right?
all these-
And this is not his only project, in Northborough?
Oh, I know, yeah, the Northborough projects too.
So Keith, just a couple questions around the warranty of the roof and the duration of the roof.
Yeah, so we're estimating things right now that the roof system that we are proposing will be a 40-year roof with pretty solid warranties as we move forward, and that is part of the MSBA submission.
And is there some maintenance you need to do during those 40 years too? Or just less? You don't know, or?
I'm sure there's some maintenance, but hopefully no roof repairs.
Yeah.
But things like gutters and making sure drains are clear,
Yeah.
just routine maintenance.
Is the PVC a 40-year membrane?
It is, Tim, yep.
Okay.
And the roofing company that did the original roof went out of business, which is why we didn't have recourse on the current roof that's there.
Maybe that's why.
Going out of business in the construction business is an art form.
Yeah.
Strategy.
Okay. Anyone have any questions about the Trotter roof?
No.
All right.
Right.
Well, thanks.
Thank
And I
you.
guess we'll
Thank you.
see you on the 31st.
All right, I move to adjourn at 7:25. Denise seconded. I have to do roll call vote. Alan?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Roger? Yes. Denise? Aye. And Chelsea's aye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, who's going to be in charge of getting the request out to people to apply for the appointments? You?
Yeah,
Okay.
so we will.
Make sure Chelsea hears that.
Yeah, so we'll file the charge with the town clerk tomorrow. Okay. And then put out the,
Oh, there's an important typo to correct. You see in the charge.
Okay, so we'll do the work to get out the word for people to apply, okay?
Where it says 2,
Yeah.
should say 2.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Got it.
Got it.
Brian wants to introduce the actuarial.
Brian, do you want to introduce the FY '25 OPEB audit report? And I was reading, why is it an FY '25 report?
6/30/25, yes.
Okay,
Covers that period.
all right,
Takes a while, Andrew.
okay.
It does take a while. So this is KMS actuaries.
Actuaries.
Anyways, I think you're familiar with them. I think some of you at least have seen Amanda and Michael in the past. We've used KMS probably 8 or 9 years now, 10 years, somewhere around there. It's been a while. So Linda Bourneville is the principal of the company, and so they have given us our results for our other post-employment benefits audit. So every other year, just to remind the board, there is a full audit, and then on the off years, there is sort of a continuing information mini audit. This is a full year audit, so it's a lot more information. If you did see the audit materials, the real audit materials, it's very granular, so I've asked Amanda and Michael just to kind of keep it to the high level with their, the key takeaways from the audit, and, the good, the bad, and what we can do in the future to focus on trying to get that liability down. So with that, I guess I can turn it over to them.
Can you give Michael screen sharing privileges so he can bring up the presentation? Or I can do it, Michael, if you don't have it.
I just got the privileges, so I'm going to pull up the presentation right now.
Okay.
Just give me one moment, please. Why can I not? I'm going to share my screen. So can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is our presentation for the fiscal year 2025 results and disclosures for the town of Southborough's other post-employment benefits program, otherwise known as OPEB. So we will get started.
Just to go over the agenda quickly, just a quick introduction and background on the purpose of the valuation. We'll go a little bit over the accounting standards, basically the regulations that apply to how we disclose things. We'll talk a little bit about our valuation model, the provisions and assumptions that go into that, then go into key results for fiscal year 2025. Like Brian was saying, this is a full valuation year, so we made some updates. We'll talk about experience and assumption changes, key disclosure items that go into the financial statements, and we'll also go over the OPEB trust, just a little bit of background on that, and where the town is with the funded status of the trust. Next slide.
Yep.
So just an introduction to us. We're KMS Actuaries. We have a pretty significant presence in the public sector, mainly in Massachusetts. I think we have over 100 clients now, and the majority of those are Massachusetts municipalities. So we've done quite a number of OPEB valuations over the years. We're also actuaries to a number of Massachusetts retirement systems, including Worcester Regional, that the town of Southborough is a member of. My name is Amanda Makarovich. I'm a consulting actuary here. I've been KMS since 2017, in the actuarial profession since 2013. And my associate, Michael Bubalo, has been with us since 2020. So we've both actually been working on the town of Southborough since they became a client back in, I believe it was 2021.
So this slide is just going to go over what exactly we hope to accomplish with each of these annual valuations. So what we want to do is we want to look at all of the various OPEB plan experience factors. So we look at it from two different angles. We look at it from the liability side, and we look at it from the assets. So for the liabilities, we look at factors such as what are the changes to the assumptions that are part of the valuation? What are some changes to the benefit provisions, or how did the demographic experience change over the past 2 years? Those items of that nature are what goes into the liability side. We then look at the asset side, where we look at how the assets have performed and how much the town has contributed since the prior fiscal year. That all goes into the asset portion of the OPEB plan experience. Another reason why we perform these valuations is because we want to review all of the assumptions and methodologies. We want to assure that everything is appropriate, so meaning that everything should be suitable and relevant to the analysis of the town's OPEB program. We want to ensure consistency with our results, so all of the methods that we are using align with what we've done in earlier years. We also want to check for reasonableness with all of our assumptions and methodologies. So we want to make sure that everything flows logically on an intuitive level, and we want to make sure that everything that we change or don't change is backed by sufficient justification and good explanations. In addition to reviewing the OPEB plan experience and the assumptions, we also develop annual contributions for the town. The town does have a formal funding policy set in place, and we want to determine how much that's going to increase the liabilities and the future benefit payments as time goes on. Once we look at all of these various aspects of the OPEB program, these can then be shared and illustrated in upcoming audits and financial statement disclosures. So there is a benefit to it from an accounting perspective. And now Amanda will be talking more about the OPEB accounting standards.
So this is just, so like Michael said at the beginning, this is the accounting disclosures for the other post-employment benefits, or OPEB. So that encompasses stuff like a big one is going to be your retiree medical, your health insurance provided to retirees. That's probably the biggest contributor to the liabilities, but then it also includes for Southborough, life insurance and dental insurance. The town also contributes a portion of the premium for those items. So the standards they are what is in place for the methods and some of the assumptions that we use to determine these expenses and liabilities. That, how do we disclose the assets and liabilities that Michael was talking about? That GASB 74 and 75 are the standards that cover these other post-employment benefit plans. So there's, information in those standards that explains, some of the ways that we are required to disclose these items. Now, GASB does not require funding OPEB liabilities, just reporting them. So for the Worcester Regional Retirement System, or in all the other Massachusetts retirement systems, there's a statute in place that says those systems are supposed to be fully funded by 2040. For OPEB, there isn't something similar to that at this time. So there's a lot of discretion in terms of, do municipalities fund OPEB at all? And if they do, how much do they fund? When do they fund it? We'll talk a little bit later on about what the town is currently doing in terms of their funding policy, like Michael said. But the key takeaway here is that, there's a lot more flexibility on the OPEB side in terms of that funding. So just going back to those standards, so GASB is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and that generally applies to, all your state and local government entities. For the private sector, the equivalent would be the FASB, which is the Financial Accounting Standards Board. But, your towns, your cities, your school districts, and so on and so forth, those are covered by GASB standards. And like I said, that would be GASB 74 and 75 are the key ones that apply to OPEB. And then along with that, just in general, these disclosures are covered by these generally accepted accounting principles. So that's really just, more on the financial statement side of things, in terms of how those are compiled and put together. And then finally, just from the actuarial standpoint, Michael and I, along with Linda, we're all members of the American Academy of Actuaries. So we have our own standards that we're required to comply with in terms of, professional code of conduct, qualification standards. Do we have the experience, the qualifications to be performing these valuations, putting these reports together? Actuarial standards of practice, these are, kind of go into, data quality, specific things applying to different areas of practice, how our reports are put together. just a lot of different things in terms of how, an actuarial report is set up and what we provide to our clients.
So this next slide is going to go over the process from start to finish on how exactly we develop these results. And it all starts with a census data submission where we collaborate with the town's treasurer office and the town treasurer to get up-to-date data on the town's active employee population and the town's retiree population. Because this is a full valuation audit this year, we did require new census data as of June 30th, 2025. So we then had to review the data for any missing or questionable data entries. Once we established and finalized the census data, we then move on to the benefit provisions, which is really one of the core aspects of helping to administer and structure these benefits. Some examples of benefit provisions include the types of medical plans that are offered to retirees, how much of the monthly premiums do retirees need to pay for their medical and dental coverage. Those are the types of items that we try to research and review when we look at the benefit provisions. After looking at all of the benefit provisions, we then move on to our actuarial assumption set, where we divide the assumptions into economic assumptions such as the discount rate and healthcare trend rates. And then we also look at the demographic assumptions, which can include items such as mortality rates and decrement rates like termination rates and retirement rates. And then finally, once we build those assumptions, we then combine everything. Those three items, the membership data, the benefit provisions, and the assumption set, we then combine everything into a valuation report that can then be used for all funding and accounting related purposes, such as the upcoming audits for the town. This next slide is going to go into more detail about the actual plan provisions that are provided by the town. This information can be found in section 5 of our valuation report. So the main aspect of the benefit plan provisions is the medical coverage that you offer to your retirees. So currently there is one Medicare supplemental plan that is offered to all retirees who are eligible for and currently covered under Medicare, and that is the Aetna Advantage Plan. And the way that the cost sharing works for this plan is that 25% of the monthly premiums will be paid by the retirees, and the remaining 75% will be covered by the town. It is possible that some retirees may be late in terms of enrolling in Medicare, whether it be due to an administrative error or delays in paperwork. If that's the case, it's possible that the retiree can incur a late Medicare enrollment penalty. And if this applies to those retirees, then the town will reimburse those retirees for that late Medicare enrollment penalty amount. There are also 3 active non-Medicare plans, as we like to call them. These plans are available to your active employees and also your retirees who may have retired before age 65 and thus before they become eligible for Medicare. These 3 plans are offered through Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, and they are the HMO plan, the Focus plan, and the PPO plan. If a retiree decides to elect the HMO and Focus plans, then it works the same way as the Aetna Advantage plan in the sense that retirees will pay 25% of the monthly premiums, whereas the town will pay the other 75% of those monthly premiums. On the other hand, if a retiree decides to elect the PPO plan, then the cost is split evenly between the town and retirees. So 50% of the monthly premiums are paid by the retiree, and then the other 50% is the town's responsibility. In addition to these medical benefits, the town also provides life insurance and dental insurance benefits to all retirees, regardless of their age and regardless if they're eligible for Medicare. So for life insurance that's available to retirees, each plan has a $1,000 face value, and the monthly premium is split evenly between the town and the retirees. So retirees would pay 21 cents per month for their monthly life insurance premiums, and then the town will cover the other half of it. Similarly, for dental insurance that's available to retirees, the cost is also shared 50-50 with the retirees. So retirees pay 50% and the town pays the remaining half of it. This slide is now going to cover the assumption set that we had to investigate for your upcoming valuation report. And this information can also be found in section 6 of our valuation report. And what this does is this tells us, pretty much gives us expectations on where we think that these results are going to be headed in the future, given the current population of active employees and retirees. So we'll start by looking at the economic assumption set. And I think the most important assumption that we analyze is the discount rate, which is pretty much used to discount the future benefit payments in all future years and tell you how much all of that would be worth today to give you that total OPEB liability value. This year, we disclosed a discount rate of 6.46%, which is very consistent with what we disclosed last year, where we showed 6.48% as of June 30th, 2024. We like to call these types of rates a blended rate because it falls between the long-term expected rate of return of the town's OPEB assets, which we valued at 6.5% this year. And this long-term rate of return for the assets is the same as what we disclosed for fiscal year 2024. The municipal bond rate this year, as of June 30th, 2025, is 5.2%. And this was a sizable increase from what we disclosed last year, where the index we used had 3.93%. So a pretty decent increase in the bond rate since the prior fiscal year. And once again, these rates are all based on the performance of the assets, the allocations into each asset class, and where we expect those assets to be headed and how much we expect them to grow in future years. This discount rate also reflects an inflation.
Michael, sorry, this
Yes,
is Andrew. Just how many
Sure.
more slides do you have to go through?
We have about like 7 or 8.
Okay, all right.
Don't worry. The other slides won't be. I want to spend some time on this because I think this is probably the most important aspect of it. So I promise that we will be getting through this smoothly. So we also show an inflation assumption of 2.5%, which has remained the same since the prior year. We also show healthcare trend rates, and we did improve our methodology for this in that we split and have different rates for the active non-Medicare plans and the Medicare supplemental plan. So for the Harvard Pilgrim healthcare plans, we have at 8%, we expect those rates to go up by 8% in the next year, and then grading down to an ultimate final rate of 4%. However, for the town's Medicare supplemental plan, we think that next year, those premiums are expected to go up 10% and then go down to a final rate of 4%. We then look at the demographic assumptions, which once again includes the mortality rates and mortality improvement scales, which have not changed since the prior full valuation audit that we performed. And it's a similar situation for the pre-retirement decrements that also have not changed. Once again, this includes items such as the likelihood that an employee will retire at a certain age, will terminate employment with the town at a certain age, and if they would have a disability at a certain age. And then the last part of the demographic assumptions is the participation in covered spouse assumptions, which is pretty much probabilities that an employee upon retirement will elect at least one form of coverage and also have their spouse covered under a particular form of insurance benefit. This next slide just covers a brief summary of both the assets and the liabilities to give you that better picture of the plan experience since the previous full valuation audit. So on the left side, we have the OPEB trust assets, where the beginning balance is the balance as of June 30th, 2024, which is roughly $3,682,000. And then after factoring in the trust contributions made by the town and the actual investment earnings, we have an ending balance of roughly $4,645,000. We then show a rate of return since the prior fiscal year of 11.8%, and a final gain on the investments of about $208,000. We then show the total liability on the right-hand side of this slide. So the beginning balance, again, is the ending balance as of fiscal year 2024. And we add a bunch of different items to get the ending balance, which include the benefits earned and the benefits paid during the fiscal year, the interest accrued on the total OPEB liability, benefit changes, which includes any changes to benefit plan provisions and benefit terms, which there were not any as of or during fiscal year 2025, I should say. Then experience loss and changes to the assumptions. And when we add all those items together, we get a value of approximately $59,017,000 for the town's total OPEB liability as of as of June 30th, 2025. The net OPEB liability is pretty much the ending balance of the total OPEB liability minus the ending balance of the assets, which comes out to about $54,372,000. And then the funded ratio is when you divide and take the ratio of the assets relative to the liabilities, which comes out to a percentage of roughly 7.87%.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk briefly about a couple of things that really had a larger impact on the liabilities over the last couple of years since we did the prior full valuation. So if you looked at that slide that Michael just showed you, and you saw that there was that almost $13.2 million experience loss included in the increase in the total OPEB liability. A big driver of that was the health plan premium increases over the 2-year period. So our prior assumptions stated that we expected about 16% increases over 2 years, 8% in the first year and 7.5% in the second year. What actually happened was quite a bit larger increases. Started the non-Medicare plans first because that was a little more straightforward. Those increased about 27%. You know, a lot of that is just trends we're seeing with a lot of our clients, that health plan premium increases, they're just going up quite a bit in recent years, various factors going into that. But really the biggest driver of that loss was this Aetna Advantage plan, where the 2-year increase was around 88%. And I think, you know, we reached out to Brian about this when we saw it, because certainly this is not something that we commonly see for a plan premium to go up that much. So the Aetna Advantage plan is a Medicare Advantage plan. There are some pretty big changes to Medicare in recent years with the Inflation Reduction Act. One of the key drivers there is that there was a cap put on prescription drug costs under Part D. And so reflecting those changes, you know, really drove, you know, when the people who, you know, there's separate actuaries who set your health care premiums. You know, there's a whole, you know, actuarial process that goes into that as well that's different from what we do. But when, you know, those actuaries are looking at setting your premiums, they were looking at the plan experience. They were looking at these changes in, you know, the provisions of Medicare that were, you know, the federal government was the one who, you know, put these laws into place saying that, you know, Medicare beneficiaries can only pay so much. And so if Medicare beneficiaries, you know, can only pay so much out of pocket, that drives premiums up. So then, you know, going back to the assumption changes, you know, Michael mentioned earlier that we split out the Medicare plan trend rates separate from the non-Medicare plans. And you can kind of see, you know, based on the experience, you know, why we might do that. So these higher increases on these Medicare plan premiums, you know, we work with a healthcare actuary on this, and basically, you know, we studied this, and that we're saying, you know, everything out there is telling us, you know, these higher increases are expected to continue into the near future, and that's why we made that assumption change. That particular change in the trend rate led to about a $7.4 million increase in the liability. But then if you look on that slide that Michael showed you, you know, he showed that the assumption change increase wasn't quite as big, and that's because it also included this method change we made for determining this per capita cost for the Medicare Advantage plan. Just go over that quickly. So for any healthcare plan that the town offers, you know, whether it's one of the non-Medicare plans or prior to this Aetna Advantage plan, or I think there was a Medicare supplemental plan offered at one point. Other towns just offer the supplemental plan, but in general, your employees, your retirees, they're all paying the same premium regardless of their age. But in general, you can expect healthcare costs to vary by age. So this premium, it's, you know, if somebody's a certain age, you know, they're paying, depending on how old they are, maybe less or maybe more than they would be if they were to go out on their own as an individual and get a quote for health insurance coverage based on their age. So what we were doing and what we continue to do for the active plans is that we have these age adjustments that we apply to the per capita cost that add in this implicit subsidy, as we call it, for that age differential. But this year, for the Medicare Advantage plan, we reviewed some professional guidance, talked to our healthcare actuary, because for a Medicare Advantage plan, there's actually this risk-adjusted federal subsidy that's designed to eliminate these, you know, the differences due to age and health status and all of those factors. And so after that review and consultation, we determined that it was appropriate to just use a single level per capita cost for this Medicare Advantage plan. So without those aging factors applied, that actually led to a $5.1 million decrease in liability. And a lot of that is just driven by the fact that as people get older, they're expected to have higher health care costs, and removing those adjustments just brought down the liability a little bit. So the combined impact of the experience and the assumption changes, and we made a couple other, you know, like Michael talked about, we updated the discount rate, it went down a little bit, so that increased liability a little bit. We also made a change to a covered spouse assumption. So the total impact of all these changes, as well as that experience, was an increase in the liability of about $14.7 million. And then as Michael pointed out on the previous slide, though, the OPEB trust did have a strong return, about nearly 12%. It was 11.8%, where, you know, compared to the assumed 6.5% return. So that strong return on the assets did help minimize the increase in the net OPEB liability a little bit.
What was the net?
Michael, can you go back to the previous slide? $54,372,000.
I know it's 54. What was the previous number? What did the 54 grow from?
Let me see if I got that number handy. I should have it. So for fiscal year 2024, I've got the report open. Let me just see if I can find that number really quickly.
I got it.
It was $38.7 million at the end of 2024.
This is astounding.
Yeah,
Gone
so.
from 38 million liability to 54.
So if you look at the chart in Exhibit 1.2, let me see, or one of them that shows it historically, we went from, for the last 4 years, it just went down. And then this year it went up very significantly.
And like I said, a big portion of that is that major increase in that Aetna Advantage plan there, that, you know, that went up almost 90%.
Right.
That'll, you know, that
And that
was
was as of
big.
like a year ago, right?
1/120, well, no, the Aetna plan was whatever, and then it went up 90%, 1/126.
Now, we did reflect the 1/1/2026 premiums in this valuation because they were available at the time we completed it.
Okay.
I think we're bankrupt. I don't know what else to, but can we at least talk about what our little $250,000 is?
Well,
not
that's
gonna
what I was
get us?
thinking. I listened to the presentation, I think, what do we do with this information? I mean, it seems like we should increase our OPEB
Well,
contribution, but
remember,
it's so small that it doesn't really.
remember, Brian, and correct me if I'm wrong, the plan is to do the 250 until we catch up with the pension, and then take that big pension contribution we're making, that 11.7% pension contribution, and start throwing it into this. So that's how you get
Yes.
there. You'll never get there with 250 a year, not even close.
Yes, that's correct. We actually have a slide on that a little near the end of our presentation that we were going to get to very shortly.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just shocked at
No, it's okay.
$54 million.
So Kathy, it's on page 12 of the report, the change. So just reading the numbers from the total OPEB liability, going from 2021 to 2025, it goes 49.8 million, 49.5 million, 45.2 million, 42.3 million, and then the most recent 59 million.
Well, the net, look at your net, that's what you want to focus on, because we've got, so go down to the
Okay.
54, right?
It's
Still crazy
still
number.
down, 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 down,
And that's
down,
not the
boom.
pension, that's just the health insurance, life insurance, and dental.
All right, so you were gonna go to the next slide that just talks about
Buy
the,
lottery tickets.
Really? My God, we're paying.
Yes, if there are no, yes, unless anyone has other questions, we could continue with the financial statement disclosures.
Okay, and I'll make this really quick because I know we're trying to get through this as quickly as possible, and I do want to leave some time for any additional questions. So like Michael, I think Michael touched on this earlier, I think we both did actually, that the results from this valuation do go into the town's annual financial statements for their audit. We just talked about the net OPEB liability, obviously. Another item that goes into the financial statements is this expense under GASB 75. For this fiscal year, that's $5.9 million. What that includes, just really briefly, is the service cost, which is the portion of the actuarial present value that's attributed to benefits earned during the current fiscal year, the interest cost, and then there's also deferred recognition of these experience gains and losses. So this big experience loss that we're talking about right now, the $13 million experience loss, that's not going to be recognized all at once in your financial statements. I am looking at the report right now to look at the period it's going to be recognized over, because what that's based on is the average future working lifetime of the population. So that's the period that gets deferred over. And let me just see really quickly if I can find what this is for fiscal year 2025 in the report. There it is. Just over 7 years, 7.13 years. So that's the recognition period that this experience loss, as well as these assumption changes, gets deferred over. That does change with every full valuation, but over the last few years, last 5-7 years or so, it's been pretty close to around 7 years, give or take, like half a year. So that's pretty common. And then finally, these investment gains and losses, those are split up over 5 years. That's just what the GASB standards indicate for how those are recognized, that that's universally 5 years.
Okay, so since we have established some details on the key results from our valuation report, we can move on to the OPEB trust and the funding policy that's currently in place with the town. So there is a funding policy in place that the town has been consistent with in recent history, and that is that the town has been contributing $250,000 in each fiscal year since fiscal year 2017. This year, for fiscal year 2025, was slightly different because there were two separate contributions of $250,000 made in fiscal year 2025. So because there was that extra contribution, there will be no contributions in fiscal year 2026. And then they're going to continue with their traditional funding policy of $250,000 per fiscal year in fiscal year 2027. And beginning in fiscal year 2037, once the Worcester Regional Retirement System is expected to be fully funded, the town will then reallocate the unfunded liability of their pension appropriation to their OPEB program and the retiree benefit obligations. Now Amanda will go over some general details about some of the guidelines within the OPEB trust.
Have you done a computation to show how long it will take to get the OPEB trust fully funded with these assumptions?
So we do have in Appendix A, we do have kind of the layout of what we expect those contributions to be. So it's been a consistent 250,000 up until that fiscal year 2037. And then we do show how much we expect the contribution to increase by the time we reach 2037.
And then we also show in that Appendix A that currently, now this is just to use like Michael talked about earlier that we have this discount rate of 6.46%, which is very close to that long-term rate of return. It's not quite there because there are a couple years before. So the way that this blended discount rate works is it's about like the portion of the benefit payments for the year that are expected to be, like they're expected to be funds sufficient in the trust to pay them or not. So there's a few years before those higher Worcester regional contributions kick in that there's not quite enough in there. So that's why there's still a tiny bit of the bond rate causing this blended rate. But when we look at this projection in Appendix A, we have the Worcester regional contributions stopping in fiscal year 2048. That's as far as they need to go out to use this 6.46 discount rate. We could push them out many, many years into the future, and that discount rate would still stay the same. Now, you're talking about full funding. We haven't done really a projection on that yet. So that's something we could do if that's something you're interested in. I know that, you know, like you're understandably concerned about this large liability increase, and, you know, whatever we can do, you know, in terms of projections that you'd be interested in. We also would be happy to model the impact of alternative funding policies if that's something you would like to look into. You know, if the funds are there, perhaps to start increasing the contribution sooner, or, you know, whatever the case may be. That's something that, you know, Brian or whoever could reach out to us about after this meeting if there's interest in seeing some more studies on what the impact and how much you would need
To that
how
point,
long.
we did have at one town meeting, I think we passed an article that approved a petition to the state legislature for,
To pre-fund it if the interest rates were
yeah, and then I just
favorable.
don't remember, I don't remember
But
whatever.
they're not favorable right now, so that's
No,
why.
I know that, but the idea was that it would be a tool to use if a better scenario ever came. And I just don't remember where this, if it ever got passed by the state legislature.
But look at stay on Appendix A for a second. I've got it. So you're telling me that in 2089, our net liability is gonna be $250 million?
Sorry, which table are you in Appendix A?
Table 3,
Table 3, okay, sorry.
and it doesn't look like you are applying the pension?
So that's actually the fiduciary net position, that's the OPEB trust assets growing along the way with that, after those contributions are made and that 6.5% return. We don't have a projection in the liability there currently. Like I said, that's something we certainly could provide, but that's not something that's required, you know, as far as a projection under the GASB standards.
So I'm looking at Table 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess the question I have is, the grand plan is to somehow make sure that we remain at least reasonably solvent until we get to 2037.
Right.
Or 2038.
Mm-hmm.
And you tell me if I'm looking at the right table, because, and it looks to me like essentially the net assets sort of trend downward.
What page are you on it?
I'm on,
Appendix A.
I'm on
I'm
Table
gonna say
2.
Which one? What
Appendix
year?
A, Table 2.
Okay, but what years are you? What years
I'm
are on that
looking
page?
at between 25 and 37.
Okay.
So, I mean, make sure correct me if I've got this right, that, you know, we would drop down to a balance of $1.8 million in 36.
So this is hypothetically, like if you were actually to be paying benefit payments out of the trust, so that's another key point to keep in mind, is that right now you're paying your benefit payments for the retirees outside of the trust. Like the way this projection is set up, in order for us to determine that discount rate, we have to make that assumption that are the assets sufficient to pay these projected benefit payments. And so we show, like, you know, if the benefit payments were to come out of the trust, then, you have these contributions going in as well. But keep in mind that with the benefit payments right now being made outside the trust, that if the contributions continue to go in, the asset experience continues to be favorable, that like you've seen over, recent years, that balance is still going to continue to grow.
Okay, so what you're telling us then is that between now and 37, if we maintain the existing policy, which is putting in the extra 250,000, we have a path to success.
Right, and one more thing about the table too, you'll see that there's a header that says employer contributions for current plan members. So actually, what's going on here is that I think we are saying that those benefit payments are kind of going in and out of the trust.
But they're not. So why do we show it that way? I mean, we pay him, we write the check, so we don't put them in the trust and take them back out. So I think this is really confusion, not to show just the 250 going in, why it's going in.
I've got to say, I got 2 degrees in economics, and I used to do econometrics, and I'm like I'm wading through pea soup here. This is not.
I'm sorry.
This is not illuminating.
Okay, so let's assume they're doing what they are supposed to do. Okay,
Well,
so we'll give you that, but it is so confusing. Okay, but what Al said is not the case, right? The 250 is going to get us nowhere near what we need to be, correct? So we need the pension number to be added to this to even start whacking away at this. But is that why between 20, 38, and 39, there's such a, 36 and 37, there's such a big contribution because you're starting to put the pension number in there too?
Yes, that's correct on the pension number. What I was going to say was that on these employer contributions for current plan members, the GASB, and you're right, this is not the easiest thing to understand. And part of that is because GASB has this requirement that when you're projecting these employer contributions, you have to account for the fact that there's going to be future plan members in there. So it's only applying a percentage of the contributions to the liability, to the benefit payments for the current plan members, taking into account that this population is going to have new entrants that aren't covered under our projections currently. To really touch on what you're saying, I would agree. So let me go look at another. So for comparison, we calculate what's called this actuarially determined contribution. That's based on a 30-year amortization, a 30-year pay down of this unfunded liability. That's in Exhibit 1.3 of our report. For comparison, that's about, for this upcoming fiscal year, about $6 million. Benefit payments cover about $2 million of that. So the net amount, if you're not paying benefit payments to the trust, that you would need to contribute to be on the way to the 30-year pay down in fiscal year 26 would have been about $4 million. So you are correct in saying that the $250,000 really isn't getting you anywhere quickly, so to speak. And that's why, I mentioned that, there is the option to look at some alternative funding policies. But then, yes, once you get to the pension contributions, when Worcester Regional is fully funded, that is when you really start making that progress.
So I think it'd be helpful for us all to see at some point a schedule that shows if we start redirecting the current pension contribution that we're making to try to get that fully funded by 2037 over to OPEB, then how long would it take with the various assumptions to get that fully funded, get the OPEB fully funded?
And that is absolutely something we can provide, that we have provided to some of our other clients. Like I said, that's just not something that's required under the GASB standards, so we don't typically put it in our reports unless, someone asks us for it is all. But I definitely agree that would be helpful. So if that's something that the board decides that they would like to see, just have Brian reach out to us and we'll coordinate getting that over to you.
Yeah, I've got to say, I have not found this presentation helpful.
Let me also say this. Al and Margarita, we always assume we're going to be dead by the time some of the stuff happens. I think Tim and Andrew are going to be dead too by the time this thing gets fully funded.
Well, I agree. I think
I just
Sorry,
want to
but.
make sure it's not going to blow up even.
Well, I agree. I don't know, coming out of this discussion, I have no idea whether I'm sitting on a ticking time bomb or whether we have a plan to gracefully transition to the 2037, 38 period where we can then, this is a long-term problem. As I say, I'm going to be dead, but before it's solved. But I'm sorry, I'm not getting warm and fuzzies out of this because I could probably spend 6 months and wade through all of this, but it's not helpful.
Well, maybe it makes sense then to work with Brian to, this is something where, what I hope is that we just don't, there's a tendency, you hear the presentation from year to year, and then you just forget it, This one where we can't forget it, and it's gonna, like, the decision point for this is, should we do something different than just for the next fiscal year, contributing the 250? And there should be some other analysis done to inform that decision. That's what I think.
Well, I think the fundamental question we have is, do we try and hold on by our fingernails in some way
Yeah.
until we get to 2038? Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong. Or,
No, we've
or-
gone from 39 to 54 in 1 year. My gosh.
Yeah, I saw that too. And if that's the plan, is to hold on by our fingernails until we get to this point where we've funded the pension, and then we can begin funding this, which is actually the more modest of our obligations. That's one thing, but, I'm not getting anything out of this that tells me whether I've really got a serious problem or not.
Brian, could I ask you a question? How did we get here? Was it the fact that it was the Worcester County Fund?
No, this has nothing to do with Worcester County.
So how did,
It's got its own problems, as if anybody's read the news the last few days.
Yep.
So, but this is not Worcester County. This is our own money and our own OPEB that's being invested to try to start saving up some money so that as these costs go up, we don't have to keep just funding it in the current year budget, like we're doing right now.
Basically, the accounting board years ago, probably 15 years ago, made a huge change and said none of the towns or cities are identifying future benefits that you're accruing. So right now, take me for example, I theoretically have a retiree benefit I've accrued, but it wasn't recognized anywhere. So now they're trying to recognize it. The other thing is, everyone else is in the same position. This isn't a.
You mean all the other
Southborough
towns?
problem.
No.
This is a national problem of
And it's-
underfunded
Actually, that's
liability.
a better point. It's not even a Massachusetts problem. Yeah, it's a national
Yeah.
problem, so.
Be thankful you don't live in Illinois.
I was just gonna say Chicago too. But yeah, it is a big problem, so.
So if you were gonna take a different approach to maybe balance it out better, what would you do?
The best thing you can do is sort of try to do the funding that you can, but also try to, manage the benefits the best you can too. Come at it from both angles.
Remember, unlike the private sector, the public sector is, the retirement benefits are quite lucrative. No private company has a defined benefit plan anymore. We do. When you've got a plan that pays 80% of your highest 3 years, it's a good plan. So you got that, and then you've got this that gives people health insurance for life on top of their Medicare. So this is a very expensive set of benefits that are offered municipal employees. It's just a fact.
Well, maybe one of the things that we should consider is, and I don't know whether this works or not, but is to encourage people to defer retirement. And, that might, and I'm not quite sure how you do that, but, we have public employees who can retire as early as the age, I think, of 50 and 55. And, which maybe there ought to be.
So that's something that's determined at a state level,
Vested for
right?
10 years.
I believe police officers can retire.
55.
Yeah.
Teachers are what,
55.
58? And so therefore, Medicare is 65 for everybody, right? So whatever that gap is between, retirement and 65, we're
on the
those people are still on the active plans, they're paying the 25%, we're paying the 75%. When you get to Medicare, at least, Medicare is gonna pay a lot more than what we're having to pay for active plans, but healthcare is just extremely expensive. And people live longer and longer.
So, and Brian, do you want to, I don't know, over the next couple months, work and, see what we can get for different
Truly, what we have to
alternative funding
fund after
mechanisms?
37 to truly get this liability down,
All right,
so it's fully funded.
all right, well, thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions?
Brian, and the board in general, I just want to chime in that one mitigation strategy we have seen some other municipalities take, to try to bring liabilities down is increasing that contribution percentage that retirees contribute. For that, like you said, for the active plans and for that Medicare plan, the town's contributing 75%, and that split can go down to 50-50 per statute. So that is an option that we had seen some municipalities look at, that if they're trying to bring their liabilities down, they push some of that cost toward retirees.
Something to consider. All right, thanks.
If there are no other questions, we do have just a few quick slides to discuss.
We
and
don't,
then-
Michael, I think unless there's any, and we're kind of at a point, I think that we probably want to.
That's okay, that's okay. Just,
All right.
thank you for letting me know, guys. But yeah, if anyone has any other questions, thank you guys for letting us present our results to you today. Sorry, I meant to
Yes,
stop sharing.
if you come up with any solutions, we're more than willing to listen.
I mean, like I said, the two biggest things you're going to be able to look at, and well, there's a couple options, like I was saying, we can definitely prepare that projection in terms of, your current funding policy, where that would get you, how much longer, it would take to get to that fully funding that liability. We can definitely look at some alternative funding policies if the board wants to discuss, some potential for looking at a different approach than that $250,000 and waiting for the Worcester Regional contributions to move over to OPEB. And then again, the other side is to, make changes to the benefits offered, whether that's the contribution rate is split between retirees and the town, or, like I said, a lot of what drove this big increase in liability is just health insurance in general getting more expensive. And so I don't know if that's on the table to where maybe the town would, want to look at, different plan offerings even. We've seen other municipalities do that as well.
We've already done that this year, where we're doing the switch from Aetna, but are you saying you do have a lot of clients that are using a 50-50 split for their retiree health insurance program?
I don't know if I'd say a lot, but we do have some. I mean, we kind of have clients all over the place in terms of the split. We have some, we have a number that have the 75-25 like you, or an 80-20. We do have some doing the 50-50. We have some that are even more generous and are still, are up, at least for some of their older retirees, it's something like 90-10. I just finished working on a report today where they've gone from a 90-10 split and slowly phased in down to 70-30. And I wouldn't be surprised, potentially to see changes in the future, that's something, that's another option to consider, is that you can grandfather in your current retirees at the rates they are, but then you can make a change in the future saying, okay, if you retire after this certain date, then the contribution rate increases.
Okay.
Something to think about.
All right, well, thanks. And I think we have a natural break point between this and our discussion of the warrant. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to act like we were not appreciative. It's just kind of shocking to see that $54 million number. I thought it was going the other way. So thank you guys for doing this work. I know is hard work to do, and I know you're following the rules you've got to follow as far as what's here, so we appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. And like I said, please, we are happy to provide additional analysis to help you get through this, so to speak, and see what other options you have on the table. Just, have Brian reach out to us for what you're looking for, and we can certainly get some more information in front of you.
All right, thanks. So we'll move on to 10-minute recess?
All right. Good play.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Yeah. All right. So, next item on the agenda is the warrant for the April 11 annual town meeting. And there's a couple articles where we have people to speak to the article in question. And Bill, I think, is in the online audience, right? And Tim Tees is here to talk about, in Article 9, the appropriation for the Atwood tank remediation. Now, as an update, and Kathy can, I think she attended the meeting, she can fill in more detail if I don't get it. But advisory voted last night, I think. They had a lot of questions about this and did not vote to support it for this town meeting? Is that?
It's different. They recommend it, so they're not going to recommend this at town meeting. You know, we support or not,
Yep.
they recommend. They have taken it out as long as Mr. Cundiff and Mr. Tees can assure us that we don't have a DEP problem. And I talked to Bill today, and he said we do not have a DEP timing problem. So they are not going to recommend it to town meeting. They would like to do it at special town meeting and then spend the summer getting, really understanding what options we have as far as trying to fix the problem, and then also what we would use the parcel for post-remediation.
Okay, so then with that, I'll just turn it over to Bill and Tim. So Bill, Tim is here in person.
Yeah, Tim I know Tim has a little presentation if he needs to sit at the table and give that, but yeah, I think the last time Tim and I met with the select board, we did have a conversation about whether or not we were going to pursue options or if we were going to just go with a remediation plan. And I believe the select board ultimately decided and directed Tim to proceed with a remediation plan, which is what the plan is that we moved forward with. But I'll kick it over to Tim. Tim can talk about specifics and answer specific questions and give you the general overview.
Sure. Everybody hear me?
Yep.
So, quick reminder of where we are. So we were here back in the fall. I presented our investigation of the site, and I presented a cleanup option at that point, and it was a very aggressive cleanup option, right? So we have lead in soil as a result of lead paint falling off that old tank that used to be on the site. The cleanup option that I presented, like I said, it was very aggressive. It was to remove all of the contaminated soil until the concentrations were below 100 parts per million, right? And that is the state background concentration for lead. So essentially return the site to background conditions, to state background conditions. Again, it was very aggressive. It was a lot of soil removal. But what it would do for the town is it would provide the town with a site that is completely unencumbered with lead issues, meaning that if whatever the town decides to do with the site in the future, the past lead issues would not be an issue. I put a price together, or we, Par Corporation, the company I work for, put together a price for that. We put a range for that cleanup option between $700,000 and $1.3 million. And that was based on a number of assumptions that we made at the time, ranges of costs for different things. That's how we came up with that range. I left the meeting last fall with the charge to do two things: develop a remedial plan and look at what we outlined in our letter was option 2. Okay, so option 2 was a less aggressive remediation plan. Still meets the state requirements for cleanup, but what we would be doing instead of removing everything that's above 100 is that we would focus on the state's cleanup standard. Now, the cleanup standard is 200 parts per million, right? So state background is 100, but the DEP allows you to clean it up to 200, right? So we were going to clean up the site to 200 parts per million, and we were going to use an averaging basis, right? So that was what we were charged to look at, right?
Just that one?
Just that one.
Okay.
Right, so we had option 1, which was our very aggressive cleanup option, and option 2 was going to be less aggressive. It would still meet state requirements for cleanup, but it would clean it up to a higher level of lead, meaning there would be more lead left on the site, but it would reduce the total volume of soil coming off, right, to reduce costs. And so we have done both of those. And the option the cleanup option that we have prepared cleanup plans for is for that option 2. Now, that option 2, in terms of its, we'll say its thoroughness in terms of cleanup, is actually very close to option 1. And I'll tell you why. So to get to the average concentration, right? So we had to get the site down to an average concentration of 200 in this option. To do that, what we do is we take all of the data that we collected, right? And we look at an average of all of that data, and we have hundreds of data points for the site. And we start to remove from our average the highest data points, right? So we have some data out there that's over 10,000 parts per million. We have one sample that's over 30,000 parts per million. So we start to remove those data points, right, and recalculate the average.
When you say remove, you mean clean it up so that it no longer has that
So
concentration,
this
right?
first step is just a mathematical exercise, right? So we have all of the data in Excel,
Okay.
right? And each data represents a uniform block on the site, right? We've gridded out the site in a 10-foot by 10-foot block. I have a figure up on the screen so you can see it. So what we do is we go through this mathematical exercise. We start removing from the average these highest concentrations. And we keep removing concentrations until we get down to 200 or less, okay? We then look at what those concentrations, what those data points actually represent in the field. Where are these data points in the field, right, on the site themselves? And then we start to say, okay, you know, that 30,000 parts per million one, that's coming out. So what does that represent? So there's a box on site that's represented by that. So we pull that box off, right? We essentially excavate that box. And so we do that for all of the data.
You go from 30,000 to 100.
In this case, we would go from 30,000 to effectively 0 because that soil is now gone. All of it is gone.
Okay.
Right? So we start to draw up a plan that shows what the removal of all of these, I call them boxes, because as you can see, they're all squares on the site. We start to remove all of these boxes, and what are we left with, right? What does the site actually look like? And what we're left with is we're left with a site that's sort of this checkerboard pattern, right? Because, you know, the data is not uniform across the site. So we're removing spots here, and we're removing a spot here. And like I said, we have this checkerboard pattern that we're left with. Keep in mind, too, that this is a three-dimensional site. This is not just at the surface, right? So we have 4 layers, 5 layers, actually, that we investigated. We call them A, B, C, D, and E. And in some cases, you know, we may have a clean spot at the surface, but right below that, you know, a foot below that, we have a dirty spot. And then a foot below that, we have a clean spot, right? And in some areas, we might have dirty at the surface, then clean, and then dirty again, right? So when we start to look at, you know, this pattern that emerges on the site, and we look at the practical limitations of the equipment that's actually going to be out here cleaning up this site, right? The contractor's going to show up with heavy equipment. He's going to show up with backhoes and excavators, dump trucks, right? He's going to be driving all over the site. We start to look at the practical limitations of this, and we start to say, all right, well, here's a spot where we can't surgically remove it without removing the areas around it, right? And we can't remove at this depth without removing the soil above it. Right, so we start to bring that soil back in terms of our quantity estimate, right? So we start, you know, with this surgical removal of these very discrete spots, and then we figure out what that quantity is, and then we start taking out other spots to make the site actually constructible, right? To make this a practical project that can actually be done. And that's where we landed in terms of our final quantity. It's less soil than option 1. Option 1, our original estimate was between 1,300 and 1,800 cubic yards, depending on some boundaries that we didn't quite have honed in at that point. This option is about 1,000 yards, right? So we've been able to reduce our quantity to about 1,000 yards. But in terms of concentration, right, so like I said, to do the averaging, we started with the highest concentration. We started taking those out. When we recalculated based on these sort of extra areas that we have to retrieve in order to make the site, right, we start taking those out of the average as well, right? So because we're removing them, they're going to come out. So it actually brings the site concentration down quite a bit. It's quite a bit below 200. It's about 125 parts per million, right? So not quite below the background, but well below the state cleanup standard. So this approach, this option 2 that we called it, this is a very effective remediation strategy for the site. We think it's very cost effective for what it is we're doing. It will leave a couple of spots on site that are above 200, but that's allowed, right? The site still meets the state requirements for cleanup because the average is going to be well below 200. We are removing all of the hottest areas, all of the most contaminated areas are coming off the site. We're not leaving any of those. And the cost for option 2, and I think I provided the cost to Bill, I think he distributed it. The cost is between $800,000 and $850,000, right? So it's in that original range, but it's at the lower end of that original range that we provided for option 1. So this is the option that we prepared a remedial plan for. We think it's a good option.
What, in terms of timing with the DEP, what obligations are we under?
So because of the nature of the contamination out here, because it is lead paint and it is, the contamination is at the original source of application, meaning that the lead paint was applied to this tank on this site. And there's a very special carve-out in the MCP, which is the Massachusetts Contingency Plan. There's a very special carve-out for that, for lead paint at the point of application. So this site is actually exempt from reporting requirements under the MCP and under reporting and the deliverables, so the timeline requirements that are outlined in the MCP. This site is exempt from those. With that said, it is not exempt from cleanup. So the site does need to be cleaned up, right? It does need to be brought into compliance in terms of concentrations and average concentration on the site, but it is exempt from the timelines that are outlined in the MCP.
So, but is there any outer boundary of when this has to be cleaned up by, or?
Not in the MCP. Now, I would encourage the town to do this cleanup, right, because we do have very high concentrations of lead on the site. But again, it is exempt from the timelines that are spelled out in the MCP.
What's the inflation calculation for pushing this off? So right now, the current numbers are 800 to 850. That's today's dollars, or is that?
That's today's dollars, right? So if we were to bid this right now, and it is on the street right now, getting pricing back from contractors, we expect pricing back in a couple of weeks. So I don't have an inflation number for you right now. What I can say, even since we put that estimate together, prices have probably gone up to some degree because, I mean, a month ago we were not at war in the Middle East and there was not these skyrocketing fuel costs. The equipment that's going to be out there, you've got excavators and backhoes and dump trucks and they all run on diesel. And so there could be a fuel surcharge here that we were not expecting when we did this a month ago.
If you, if you do option 2, does that restrict the future use in particular? Could we build houses on that site?
Yep.
Can we put a ball field on that site?
Mhm.
So, Tim, so advisory committee is the one that basically recommends a budget to town meeting. And they voted, they want to wait to the fall, which would be October. If we didn't wait and went ahead with the current plan, or the one that we had before they voted last night, Brian would still have to, this is debt, right, Brian? So he'd still have to go through the process of raising the money. So we're still talking July before we'd have the money to actually do this. So we're talking July, August, September, October. So maybe, now we get into the cold months too, so maybe you can do it then. So assuming we can do it in late fall, and assuming, you know, whatever's going on in this world doesn't spike things, what would be the difference in price between the bid that you're expecting back now and then if we bid it again in 5 months, if you had to guess?
So we've been seeing construction costs and remediation costs going up on an annual average about 5 to 10% per year over the last few years. The best I can say is it's probably in that range somewhere, right? You know, it's not just the time that's gone by that affects it. It's the time of year and it's the construction season. So in New England, we're limited in construction, you know, to spring, summer, and fall. And if we get a mild winter, we can sometimes do work in the winter. So we've got a lot of contractors right now that are interested and aggressive in bidding prices because they want work lined up for them in the spring and in the summer. We bid this if we hold off and we bid it in the summer, right, for a fall start, there may be less interest because contractors have already secured their work for the year. I've also seen cases where, you know, they were wrapping up work at the end of the summer and were anxious to get a project to carry them through the winter. So the construction season plays a part in that as well. It's not just the time that has lapsed, it's where we are in the construction season. And that's harder to predict. It comes down to, you know, market, you know.
I'm comfortable waiting till the fall town meeting to try and tuck this in then. And in any event, you know, it's
Well,
kind of not our.
I am too, because I'm not sure what choice we have. I mean, we can't, it's one thing to try to amend, but if it's not there to begin with, what are you amending? But anyway, I think advisory may have, I don't want to use the word confused, but given what you said, it sounds like, you know, we made clear what we wanted you to do, which is option 2, as far as the 200 parts, right? Instead of the 100 parts. So we really did say, go do this, and you did exactly what we asked you to do. So I think we've gotten a little confused as far as, you know, coming back with multiple options. We never asked you to do that. Okay, all right.
You know, as
I'm
far
not
as
opposed to-
future uses of the property, which, you know, I think advisory is, it's perfectly reasonable to ask what we would do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to put in the pitch that, you know, this is an ideal, this is probably the only piece of property that the town owns that we could put affordable units in. And, you know,
So what advisory said last night is, you know, if you're going to spend all this money to make it a, you know, nice piece of land again, seed it, whatever, don't let it go to pot again, use it for something,
yeah.
right? And so let's think about it over the summer, so we really have a plan for it at the same time.
But I also think what Tim is saying, we have to do this, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't we don't have to come up with a future plan for this.
No, but advisory
have to.
wants to, I mean, that's their prerogative, that's what they want to do. They can sit down and start talking about what they think we should. But it's also a pretty good article for fall town meeting, too. This is the kind of thing you do put on a fall town meeting as far as,
Except that we wouldn't have the pricing that we're gonna hopefully get from the bids that are at right now.
Right.
sounds
So-
like it may be a little bit more.
Well, it may be a little bit more, but we could put it out, if fall town meeting's in October, we could rebid this again in August. And, you know, because it's about a 30 to 45-day bid period is what we give the contractors. And then we'll have the pricing before fall town meeting.
And we've done the temporary protection that we voted to do, right?
We haven't yet because it snowed before we could get out there and do it. So we're going to go do it this spring.
Okay, so that's still in the plans. We'll get that done quickly, okay.
Yeah, we didn't beat the weather, unfortunately, on that.
Question for us, isn't this in the capital article, on Article 12, which is proposed by us? Am I,
The budget is advisory. This is a budget article. And they
Yeah,
can
but it
have-
is in Article 12, which
Yeah.
is,
It's still a budget article.
It would be.
I just hate the idea of, if we're gonna do it anyway, throwing away 50 grand or so of 6 months of wait.
that's my thinking, too.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're gonna do it, and we have high confidence we're gonna do it. It's gonna take time to get it all set up. I just find it weird
Just get it over.
and not in our best interest to waste 50 grand by waiting 6 months.
Al, help me here. They voted 5-0 to take this off.
I-
They're making the recommendation to town meeting, not us. If there was something we,
I think we would be better off speaking with one mind.
I do too.
You know, if it's 5%, it's $40,000. And if it's 10%, it's 80,000. I don't think it'll be 10, but, you know, we got a 4.6% tax increase as is. And quite honestly, we got a couple of large fish to fry. You know, the roads project, you know, that's a major hit. It's a lot of money, and I think, you know, my basic take on the roads and sidewalks is that's going to be something in the neighborhood of $360 to $420 on a $900,000 house. So, you know, that's a big number.
Yep.
And I don't think there's a harm in waiting until the fall. Yes, we have to do it, and I think, you know, I think the fall, this is one that's going to take some discussion, because I think as we do it, I think maybe we do it as a package to say, you know, particularly if we wanted to do affordable housing on the site, I think being able to answer the question of what we're going to use the site for could be part of that.
It's helpful.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that's convinced me to.
There may be, or if we're gonna do something else with it, but, I think having a proposed use of the site is desirable.
And of course, but we do want to get the temporary measures done now
Yeah.
that the snow's gone,
Yeah.
ASAP.
Sarah?
Sarah Warden, 27 Atwood. I live across the street. I just want to question the fixing the lead in the fall and then affordable housing as a unit. Like, it still would be two separate articles, right?
Oh, yes.
Because one has to happen and then,
Uh, the-
and the other one needs a two-third vote, right? Because
Yeah,
it's on the
that's correct.
property.
Yeah, anytime you deal with transfer or of real property, it's a 2/3 vote. So, yeah, they'd be separate articles, The town doesn't want to do one or the other, it's up to the town meeting to decide.
Although if the Affordable Housing Trust acquires, then does.
Well, if you transfer, even if we transfer
Okay,
the
you're right,
property
you're right.
to the
This-
trust,
Still a
there's
two-thirds.
still a 2/3 vote.
You're right.
Or if we transferred it to a Habitat for Humanity, which is another possibility, and full disclosure, I volunteer with them, that's still a 2/3 vote.
I just wanted to make sure it'd be two articles.
Yep.
So Tim, I apologize for implying that you didn't do exactly what we asked you to do. I just didn't remember that vote that night, but.
I didn't remember either.
Now I
so this
do.
is a good-
You definitely, now that you said it, I do remember, but I didn't when, okay, so, anyway, I
And this
think-
is one of those where if we had, and I will blame myself for this, if we had had this presentation, a month earlier, we might have been more aligned on this going into this meeting.
Yeah, because advisory would have heard this and maybe not have voted the way they did last night. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Carl?
Carl LVD, I live at 22 Atwood. I just have a simple question. Once you do the remediation, how do you know you got it?
It's a great question. So this remediation program is soil removal, right? So we're going to be digging up the soil. Some of it's going to be stabilized before we dig it up, meaning we're going to add some admixtures to it before we send it off-site. But then, we're going to be left with an excavation, right, a big hole, right? We will actually sample the edges in the bottom of that hole, right, to make sure that we got everything. Yep. So there's follow-up sampling after the work is done.
So if when you do that, did they give you a quote that there could be additional costs if you don't? Like, when you first do it, like you have an estimate of, oh, this is what we're going to do first to get it all. Then you test it again, and you realize what you didn't get it all.
Right.
So is there an additional, do they give you the cost of that?
So in the estimate that we provided, we do include some additional quantities in case, as you put it, we don't get it all on our first go-around, right? So, for example, if we find more of the really dirty stuff that we didn't expect, we've added additional soil in that category to cover those costs. So we have money in the budget to, if, essentially to go after more if we have to.
So that's part of the estimate that you give
Correct.
people?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Aren't you busy right now? Okay. That's why I was late.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions?
Oh, thank you.
Welcome.
So
Thank you,
the
Tim.
draft, the most recent draft of the warrant we have right now, if you look at our,
I have one more question about this. We have the bid process right now, right? That's not stopping? That's going to continue?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that, because I was going to ask you. We could continue with it, but we should probably cancel it. Because we'll get the data back now, right? I mean, we could continue with it, but if the bidders know that this work is not going to happen for 6 months, right, they're not going to hold their price, right?
Yep.
And so they're not going to be interested in essentially bidding a job that is going to get
October.
rebid later, right? So you're not going to get, I think, a lot of interest once people realize that this is not going to happen in the spring. So I would probably cancel the bid, so as not to waste their time.
Excuse me, Tim?
Yep.
Would you recommend that we open the bids and then cancel afterwards?
If we open the bids, well, so if we move forward with the bid right now, we will have to disclose to the contractors that we may not do this work. We may not award this contract, right? We can tell them, like, we can ask them, if you're the selected contractor, will you hold your price for 6 months, right? They may be reluctant to do that, right? Because there's a lot of uncertainty right now in
the world, right? So they're gonna say, I don't know what 6 months is gonna look like, I'm not gonna hold my price that long. Some of them may say yes, but they're gonna build into their cost some of that uncertainty, right? They're gonna put a big number on this. So knowing all that, if we continue with the bid, my fear is that we will get less interest in it. We might get 1 or 2 bidders, but they will be less inclined to give a really good price on this. And so we may be working with sort of flawed data at that point. We may get a price and say, oh, this is way higher than we thought, and it's because we only got 1 bidder. So I've been thinking about this over the course of the day, Bill, and I think probably the best course of action is probably just to cancel the bid and have everybody bid it again in August.
I don't think you want to jerk people around.
No.
Bill, are you okay with that?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine with that. The only thing I mean, it'd be nice to get an indication if we're in the ballpark of what they're thinking as well.
Right. And I totally agree with you on that, Bill. I would like to know if we're in the right ballpark. My fear is that we get 1 bid and we open it up and it's twice the cost, right? And it's because we only got 1 bidder, you know? And they said, oh, yeah, I'll hold my price, you know? I'll hold it because I gave you twice the cost. So it just opens up a little too much uncertainty, I think, to continue with it.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so the next items on the agenda are the 2 citizens petitions. So we invited the sponsors of the 2 citizens petitions to come to speak about the article. So Mr. Barron is here, right? We can bring him over to talk about Article 35. Okay, or what's now number 34. It's the second to last article in the warrant.